Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about the ongoing fallout of Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs and to ask the question as to whether or not this could be a new black swan event. And a black swan event is something that's unpredictable, rare, but has huge global consequences. And the announcement of these tariffs has caused shockwaves all across the financial markets, and there are now fears that this could be another global financial crisis. This graphic shows the major black swan events that have occurred since the start of the 20th century, and you can see that the first one was the outbreak of World War I. That was the first time that we saw a major war breaking out all across the globe. And obviously, in terms of the impact of that, it was predominantly geopolitical, so it affected every country in the world. The second major black swan event was actually a financial event and was the Wall Street crash. And we'll go on to talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment when we have a look at what's been happening to the stock markets and compare it to what happened in 1929. In 1941, Japan's unexpected attack on Pearl Harbor shocked the world and drew the USA into World War II, and obviously that was another major geopolitical event. In 1973, the OPEC countries declared their oil embargo, which caused both a huge financial implication and also a geopolitical impact. In 1987, we saw a second stock market crash, referred to as the Black Monday crash, where the Dow Jones plunged 22% in one day, which is the largest ever drop in history. In 2001, the 9/11 terrorist attacks took place, which had huge implications both geopolitically and financially. In 2008, the global financial crisis struck, where we saw many banks collapsing and the global markets imploded. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic struck the whole of the world, closing down countries and financial systems. And in 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine shocked the world and caused major geopolitical and also financial implications. We saw energy prices rising, food prices rising, oil prices rising, and obviously since then we have seen significant sanctions in place against Russia and changes to the global supply chain and the global trading network. And if you take a step back, the thing that links all of these events is that they were unexpected, they are rare, and they caused huge geopolitical or financial implications, or in some situations, both. So the question that I wanted to pose in this video is, does Donald Trump's reciprocal tariff announcement qualify as a black swan event? Well, I think with black swan events, it's always hindsight that tells us whether or not it was one. But as it sits at the moment, there is real potential for this announcement to actually be classified as a black swan event if it subsequently leads to a major global financial crisis. So let's start off by talking about what the impact on the stock markets has been so far. Donald Trump announced his reciprocal tariffs after the markets had closed on April the 2nd, and this table shows the direct impact on 7 of the largest markets in the world on Thursday, April the 3rd and Friday, April the 4th. As you can see, the S&P 500 fell by 4.8% on the 3rd of April and a further 6% on the 4th of April, and the combined impact of those two falls was a reduction in value of $5 trillion. The Dow Jones fell by 4% on the 3rd of April and 5.5% on the 4th, giving a combined impact of just over $3 trillion. And the Nasdaq fell by 6% on the 3rd of April and 5.8% on the 4th of April, with a combined total reduction in value of $1.95 trillion. But it wasn't just the US markets that were damaged by these reciprocal tariffs. The FTSE 100 in the UK fell by 1.8% on the 3rd of April and a further 5% on the 4th, resulting in a combined fall of value of over £570 billion. The DAX in Germany fell by 3% on the 3rd and 5% on the 4th, reducing the value of the market by €270 billion. The French index fell by 3.3% on the 3rd and 4.3% on the 4th, reducing its value by €190 billion. And the Nikkei 225 in Japan fell by 2.8% on the 3rd and 2.75% on the 4th, reducing its value by 39 trillion yen. So the total financial impact of Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs was a reduction of more than $10 trillion in global markets in a space of 48 hours. So how do the falls that have been seen in the global stock markets over the last couple of days compare to the Wall Street crash in 1929? Well, as you can see from this graphic, the situation in 1929 was significantly worse. On Black Thursday, October the 24th, 1929, the markets fell by 11%, it fell by a further 13% on Black Monday, and then fell a further 12% on Black Tuesday. So over that 3-day period, the markets fell by around 36%. So at face value, the ballpark 10% fall in value that we've seen over the last 48 hours doesn't compare to the Great Wall Street crash of 1929. But I guess the question is, have we seen the bottom? Is this as far as the markets are going to go? Or are we likely to see the markets continuing to fall when they reopen on Monday? And if I was a betting man, I don't think I would put my life savings into a stock market index at the moment, because there is a real chance that we could see the markets continuing to tumble over the course of the next few days, possibly over the next few weeks. So even though we haven't seen a 36% fall within 3 days like we did in 1929, there is a possibility that we could see it going down by 20% or 30% or even more than 36% over the course of the next few weeks. And the big question is, what is going to happen to stabilise the markets? We haven't seen anything yet. Normally when you get a break in terms of the weekend like we've got at the moment, you'd expect somebody to come out and start to make announcements to try to get the markets back on an even keel. However, Donald Trump hasn't done that. And in fact, after the stock markets had closed on Friday the 4th of April, he posted on Truth Social saying, "Big business is not worried about the tariffs because they know they are here to stay, but they are focused on the big, beautiful deal which will supercharge our economy. Very important, going on right now." So based on that statement, Donald Trump is standing by his reciprocal tariffs, and so the fallout is likely to continue, and I think it's likely that the markets will continue going down. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because I think this announcement by Donald Trump of the reciprocal tariffs could be one of the big news stories of 2025. It's obviously had a major impact on the financial markets immediately. And the reason for that, as I discussed in a previous video, is that the stock markets are always looking forward. They're trying to project what's going to happen for all of those different companies that are listed on the markets. They're seeing whether or not those companies are going to continue growing, whether they will increase their profitability. And one of the reasons why stock markets have fallen is because traders are very nervous about the outlook for all of those businesses. They believe that the new environment that everybody is going to operate in is less attractive than it was before these tariffs were announced. And of course, that makes sense because now anything that's imported into the US is going to cost more. It's going to have a minimum tariff of 10% and could be as high as 46% for Vietnam. And Vietnam is a country that a lot of American countries are using for their production processes because it's a low-cost labour country. And so is China, and so is Taiwan, and lots of other different places that now have significantly higher tariffs. But the other implication, as well as increasing the cost of imports for the USA, is what's going to happen for American businesses that are exporting around the globe, because we're now starting to see countries retaliate. So China have come out and said that it's applying a 34% tariff on all imports from the USA. So that's going to hurt lots of different US businesses, particularly the agricultural businesses that are sending food products over to China. I talked about that in a previous video. Some of the items that get exported aren't actually used in the USA, such as chicken's feet and pig's ears, which are seen as delicacies in China. And so that's been quite a lucrative market for lots of different US companies. So that's going to be a major issue for those businesses to see whether or not they can maintain the same level of exports, or if not, can they find alternative markets to sell their chicken's feet and pig's ears into? I'm not sure there's that many countries around the world who are going to be queuing up to buy those items. But of course, alongside what's happening with actual trade, there is a confidence factor. So we've seen 2 IPOs being pulled as a result of these reciprocal tariffs. Klarna, the business that you can take finance from when you're buying things on the internet, was due to raise $1 billion as part of its IPO. That's now been shelved, as has the StubHub IPO. And what this means is that it's going to be more difficult for companies to be able to raise money, because if you're an investor, if you're a big fund manager at the moment, what you're seeing is the value of your fund that's listed will be going down, because alongside all the other businesses that are on the stock markets, its value is falling. And so that means that you're going to have to look at all your existing portfolio and start to decide what the implication of these new tariffs could be on your existing investments. Because if a lot of your companies are trading with the USA, or if they're importing things from countries that have now got these high tariffs on them, that means that the value of those businesses is also likely to go down. Even though they might not be listed on the stock market, the value of the company is likely to fall. Valuation multiples are also likely to go down because companies will be making less profits, and so therefore you'll pay less when you're buying and selling companies. And all of this means that everybody will be more cautious. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen over the course of the next few months, because if every country in the world follows suit and does what China has done and applies a reciprocal tariff against the USA to match the one that's just been applied against it, then Donald Trump might decide that he wants to increase the tariffs further. And so we could get a genuine trade war here, whereby everybody gets tariffed out of doing business with the USA. And if that happens, obviously it would have a huge financial implication on the USA's economy, but also on the global economy, because the US is the biggest economy in the world by quite a long way. So what we are seeing here is a complete rewriting of the trade rules that are currently going on. And that's why the markets are nervous. That's why stock prices are falling. That's why investors don't want to invest any money. So you've got lots of different businesses that are reliant on raising more capital to keep growing. We saw recently that OpenAI, that owns ChatGPT, raised $40 billion. If that was happening today, I think there'd be a big question mark as to whether or not, firstly, they'd be able to raise that capital, and secondly, what the valuation would be. It would certainly be lower today than it was a week ago before these reciprocal tariffs were announced. So we've got a lot of uncertainty. And when you have uncertainty, that's usually bad news for the financial markets, and means that we could see the markets falling over a prolonged period. So to answer the question as to whether or not the reciprocal tariffs that Donald Trump has announced is a new black swan event, I think there is a genuine chance that it could be, but only time will tell. We'll have to see whether or not it has a prolonged impact, whether or not Donald Trump stands by his announcement and sticks to his guns and says they are staying in place. I'm not prepared to negotiate with any country. The tariffs are the tariffs. If that is the situation, then that will definitely have a negative long-term impact on the global markets and could be a new black swan event that causes another global financial crisis. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking, because that's what I'm trying to do really. Get you thinking about what the implications of something that you see on the news or read in the papers could be for your life. It will have a knock-on impact. That's what I'm trying to do. Get you thinking outside the box to think about how could this impact on me. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you to everybody that's supporting the channel. If you bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks, thank you so much for that support. Really means a lot to me. And if you're a long-term supporter, either through Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee membership or YouTube membership, thank you for that long-term support. Really helps keep me motivated and thinking up more ideas for videos. And here's something to put a smile on your face. Ah!